Stripe keeps declining your upsells. I'm going to talk to you today about what you can do to increase your conversion rate on your upsell funnel and avoid getting all these decline messages. My name is Maria Sparagis, and I work with thousands of millionaire business owners, and I help them figure out how to convert more sales in their cart. Today, I really want to focus on the upsell. I get a lot of questions about this. I see this a lot on social media. Very frustrated business owners who are getting declined transactions from Stripe from, a front-end sale that comes in to an upsell. So the front end gets approved and then upsell 1 or upsell 2 gets declined. And this can be very frustrating, especially if, you're not making too much money on your front end and you're waiting to pad your average order value with upsells that you're offering to your customer. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on what you're going to do in Stripe Radar and within the Stripe platform to increase your approvals for all your upsells within Stripe. Now, you may not be realizing this, but Stripe is likely causing these transactions to decline. If a client has been approved for your front-end sale, odds are they are able to get approved for the rest. But there are some triggers and some issues within Stripe's algorithm that may not be understanding your business that may be causing these transactions to fail. Now, let me read the exact question that I got just this past week. And like I said, there's tons of these, but this is one example to show you what one business owner is going through. And obviously the price points and the scenario might be a little bit different for you, but I'll walk you through the main things you need to look at in your Stripe account in order to make sure that you get your maximum conversions on your upsells. So let me read the question that I got this week on social media. I am pretty annoyed right now. About half of my upsells and bumps are declined in Stripe. The front-end price is $7. There's a bump of $17 and a one-time offer is $49. They have the code do not honor, with many having a network decline code of 59, which means suspected fraud. I use System for my funnel. Has anyone found a way around these transaction declines? Now, one thing I want to mention, System, ClickFunnels, WooCommerce, and all those other different shopping carts, they're all probably going to react the same. There could be some settings in your shopping cart. Today, I'm really going to focus on the settings within Stripe because I think there are quite a number of settings that you need to tweak in Stripe Radar in order to ensure that you have the best possible conversion. So, obviously you have to look at your shopping cart, and I'll do another episode if you guys like on shopping cart settings. Drop me a line down below if you'd like to see that or send me an email. But today I really want to focus on Stripe and Stripe Radar settings. Now, one thing I see quite often is that online business owners are not vaulting their customer card information. Now, what vaulting is basically tokenizing customer data so it stays secure. When you tokenize that data and you send a token to the customer's bank, they see that the data has been collected securely and they're more likely to approve that transaction because it's coming from a merchant who's taking precautions. So first and foremost, make sure when you log into Stripe, you look at your vault settings, your tokenization settings to ensure that you are tokenizing these transactions and sending network tokens, so Visa network tokens and MasterCard network tokens to the customer's bank in order to approve the transaction. Now, this is even more important for upsells. So what happens is the first time a customer comes into your store, he buys something, he enters all his card information, including his billing address, maybe phone number, email address, card number, expiry date, and CVV. The CVV cannot be stored. The only way that you can verify or prove that you've collected CVV and it's been successful is by vaulting the customer's data. Once it's been vaulted, there is a little flag in there saying that CVV was checked. So if the customer does the front end, gets approved, and you have the transaction vaulted and you send the vault ID to get an upsell or a bump approved, it's more likely to get approved from the customer's bank because they're going to see that the CVV was checked. If you're just resending customer information, the CVV cannot be there because Stripe cannot store the CVV outside of the vault. And what happens then is that the customer's bank gets a transaction with customer card information that's missing the CVV. So they may suspect fraud, or they may just decline because it may look too risky. So remember, you need to turn on your vault, and you have to make sure that the vault is used for all transactions after your initial transaction, your front end. All your upsells, any subscriptions need to use the vault ID in order to be able to process any future transactions. Now, the other issue specifically with this business owner is that his front end price is $7. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is that a price point that's under $10 can be seen as a testing price point or a free trial, or, kind of discounted trial price point. And what happens is a lot of customers' banks see that as potential fraud, or see this as a dispute waiting to happen. Free trials that automatically renew, or lower price points with higher price points to come, do cause a lot of disputes. So starting with a low price point of $7 and then just kind of going to $17.49 could actually be causing the problem. So the important thing here is not necessarily to change your business model right away, but you may want to start price testing. You want to try maybe a price of $19.99 or $29.99, and maybe remove the bump or make the bump a lower price point. So you may strategically convert more upsells if you have a higher front end price point and lower the price on the upsells versus the opposite, right? So you may get more people and more customers through the door with a lower price point on the front end, but you may convert less upsells if your front end price point is under $10 and then it increases. So this is not something obviously that I can tell you what is the foolproof formula. This is something you have to test, to see what your profit margins are with, having a higher price point to start with, or having, and a lower upsell price point, or vice versa. This needs to be something that you test out. But most of the time, when you have a higher price point on your front end and then a lower on your upsell, it does convert better. You'll get more approvals. Now let's get into Stripe Radar and what you can do in Stripe Radar to help fix your conversion issue on your upsells. Now, a lot of business owners sign up to Stripe, just plug in their information and start using it. One thing that you don't realize is that Stripe Radar has a lot of different settings, and they are there kind of by default to adapt to as many businesses as possible. But, they're not adapted to your specific business. For example, if you have a couple of upsells, or you have a subscription business, or you're offering a free trial, Stripe Radar may not be configured in the right way to allow for your customers to buy your specific product or service. So it is very important that you log into Stripe and you look at these rules one by one and really ask yourself if they apply to your business and at what capacity, because every business has different rules and different things that they should allow. So it's important that you look and really look at each one by one. Now, let me give you a few of the quick highlights of things that you may want to check to make sure that, things are working well for your business in Stripe Radar. Now, what Stripe Radar does is really decides what would be considered a fraud or non-fraudulent order, or what to approve and decline based on specific sets of rules that, like I said, Stripe decides for you unless you go in there and try to change certain things. Now, Stripe won't let you modify all of them, but they will let you modify or adjust some of these settings to make sure that they adapt for your business. One popular set of rules you need to verify are the velocity rules. These are the frequency and how many times somebody can buy from you depending on various factors. For example, how many times a specific credit card number is allowed to buy from you within one 24-hour period, a 1-week period, or a month period. Now, you don't have to decide all of them. You may just decide to turn, for example, the weekly period off and have a number of transactions that somebody can have with you within 24 hours, and then maybe within a month, and so forth. So you can decide, well, okay, I have a front end, and then I have a subscription, and then I have, 2 upsells, so it's maximum 4. You can maybe limit it to 5 to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room in case your business model changes. If you only have 1 transaction possible, then you can leave it at 1. So it's really, by default, Stripe changes these things depending on various things that you input when you sign up, but you have to make sure that it adapts to you. Now, another thing that you can do also is the velocity rules by IP address. So how many transactions would you allow from the same IP within 24 hours or with the same email address. These are all various things. Now, you might turn around and say, hey, why don't I just take them all off and leave everything in there? Well, then what's going to happen is you're going to leave yourself prone to fraud. And if you get, a lot of fraud because you've turned off your fraud settings, it is your fault as a business owner. Because the one thing you have to remember is that Stripe gives you the lock in order to protect your store, but you have to actually lock it. You have to make sure that you put in fraud settings and you put in rules that adapt to your business model so you don't let any bad actors buying your product or using your platform for fraud. So it's very important that you don't just leave everything open and let anything goes. You have to make sure that you take the Stripe Radar rules and you adapt it to your business model so it makes sense, but you don't allow unnecessary fraud. So I would definitely recommend, maximum number of transactions per card number, per IP, per email address, really as just some basic things that you should be inputting. If you are shipping a product, you may want to decide how far the billing address and the shipping address can be. And keep in mind, these things could be adjusted for holiday periods. Like for example, during Christmas time or another popular holiday time, Thanksgiving and so forth, you may say, I'm going to allow, I'm going to remove that setting that says you have to be within 50 miles of the billing address. But then for the rest of the year, you may want to have it on. So these are not things, hard and fast rules that you put in and you never, set it and forget it. You have to keep modifying these. You have to keep, verifying that they're still applicable for your business model. Now, there are a ton of other Stripe Radar rules. These are just kind of the common ones that make sense for most business owners to adjust because they make a huge difference. It's a very big thing to say that Stripe, for example, has maximum 3 transactions per day. Well, you might have a front end, a subscription, and 2 upsells. So, right away, your 4th transaction with it, which is your 2nd upsell, will automatically get declined because of the rules set up. So don't get caught by just using the default settings. It's really, really important. I think you guys understand now that it's very important to look at the settings and read each and every single one to make sure it's adapted to your business. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is if you're working in a higher risk space or you have, a lot of chargebacks or your disputes are kind of mounting or you're working in direct response, an industry that maybe Stripe is not super fond of, you don't want to go into Stripe Radar and just start changing everything around. You want to do it very strategically, slowly, because you don't want to trigger any algorithms in Stripe, them thinking that maybe you're trying to let in more fraud or causing issues. So you want to be very careful with that. You don't want to go too crazy and change everything at once, but you want to make sure that you strategically change the most important ones and then kind of build on that over a couple of months. And obviously that's also going to give you an opportunity to test and see what the results are of the changes that you make. I also recommend that when you do make changes to Stripe Radar or any of the Stripe rules, you have yourself maybe a Google Doc or a spreadsheet indicating the date and the change that you made, because you will only see the effects of that change, good or bad, maybe 30 days later, 45 days later, when you start seeing more transactions getting approved or less transactions getting approved if you made a mistake. Now, another key and important thing is don't contact Stripe unless you really have to. I've seen a lot of times, different business owners contacting Stripe, asking a couple of questions, and then all of a sudden you have an agent that's looking at your account and they see something that doesn't make sense. And then poof, your account is now closed or frozen or suspended or whatever the case is. So you want to try to limit your contact with Stripe to only what's necessary. The more times you kind of go through their algorithm and have them check your account and so forth, the more likely you'll have problems with them. So, this is, something that I see all the time. And I tell merchants all the time, whenever you're tweaking settings, do it slowly. Don't change too much at once. And if you have questions about it, you're better off doing your own research. You can use AI. You can contact a payment processing expert, for example, myself, and ask questions about, how things can work in a payment processing context. But it's important, especially if you're in a higher risk or restrictive type business with Stripe, that you don't reach out to them and tell them, hey, I'm trying to change the fraud rules because I think they're too strict. Obviously, that's going to cause a problem for you. And that's not necessarily what you want to do if your only provider especially is Stripe. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of an advanced payment processing discussion on how you can increase your conversions. And this really all depends on your price points. Now, as you remember from the question I read earlier, the business owner in that case had a $7 front end with a $17 bump and then a $49 upsell. So obviously he's trying that $7, and then the bump at 17 seems to have some issues, and then the $49 upsell is having even more issues in getting approved. So what he might want to do, there's a couple of things that you can test in your cart. One of them is you can try something called an auth and settle. So what that means is you authorize the card for the total amount of the transaction, for example, the 7, 17, and the 49, and then you settle. Once your customer goes through the cart, if he just buys $7, then you just settle for $7. If he buys the 7 and the 17, then you just settle for 34, or you settle for the full amount. But if you authorize the full amount, then you can settle for any amount in there, and then you're pretty much guaranteed going to get that transaction. And it's only one transaction for the customer. Now, by doing this, you have to be strategic, because if the amounts are large, you may get some more insufficient funds, you may get more declines and so forth. So if somebody doesn't have $34 on their card, do you want to let them even buy the $7 product? Obviously that's not going to be a customer that's generating income for you. So you may convert less, but you may convert better customers. So these are all things that you have to test within your cart, but there is the option of auth and settle, and that may prove to give you more of a bump in your conversion. So keep that one in mind, and perhaps test it with a part of your traffic to see how that does. And this is something that you have to look at behavior over time. You may want to turn it on for, a couple of days or a week, and then turn it off, and then look at the results a month later. Are these customers charging back more? Are these customers refunding more? Like, are they becoming regular customers, spending more? So there's a lot of factors at play, and not just the conversion on the front end. You really want to check your metrics later on. So this is something that, like I said, maybe test it for a week or a couple of days, depending on how much traffic you have, turn it off, and then revisit those customers or that segment of customers about 30 to 45 days later to see, what their average order value was, how long they stayed, how much they disputed, and so on and so forth. Now, another thing that you can do is you can have your customer indicate their card information, their personal information. You can vault that information and then let them go through your checkout, and then you can settle at the end again, because you might want to do one transaction at the end. That's a little bit different than the auth and settle, because if you do authorize the card, you're authorizing it for a certain amount. What I'm telling you is just capture the card, make sure that it's valid card information, and then put it in the vault, and then only charge the customer after he's gone through the whole checkout flow. And what that does is that you're securing their card information. The customer doesn't necessarily know if they were charged that minute or a couple of minutes later as they go through. And the less transactions you have, obviously the more approvals you're going to have, because you're going to have less chances of getting declines. So that could be another method. And you could decide, for example, that you want to still do it 2 charges or 3 charges or whatever the case is, but you capture the customer's card information, and then you only charge later once you know how much the amount is. So those are 2 strategies you can use that have proven to be successful to get you more approvals. Obviously, that lowers your transaction count. So if somebody charges back, your ratio for disputes to your sales transactions go up. So these are all things that you have to keep in mind and think about. And obviously, if you need help with that, you can contact me or somebody from my team at Direct PayNet. We can walk you through the whole risk and fraud and how things are calculated. But your ultimate goal, obviously, as a business owner, is to convert the most amount of sales. And you can try and test these different things. And the reason I don't have a hard and fast rule for you guys is because it is different per business. It is different depending on your ticket sizes and how many upsells. So, I'm giving you all these tips and tricks. I want you guys to try them out, test them, and see which one works best for your business. But it's important to know that these tools actually exist for you to test. Now, one other bonus tip, because I love to give you guys so much information, is the price points. So the lower the price points, unfortunately, that could be a sign of fraud. So as I said earlier, and I'm going to just kind of really drill it down, price testing is really important. And as an extra tip, do not have price points that are too close together, because then the customer's bank may think it's a duplicate transaction. So if you have $7 and then $7 for your upsell or your bump, that actually is not going to work, and you're going to get a lot more declines. So you have to make sure that your price points are different, and ideally, you have at least a $10 gap, so it doesn't look like you're testing small price points to the customer's bank. Keep in mind the customer's bank doesn't know who you are as a merchant, what you're selling, and so forth. So if they're just seeing random small value transactions coming from you within minutes of each other, they might think this is fraud or the customer's card is stolen. So they may block it. So keep in mind, if you're starting, let's say, with a $7 price point, you may want to try, $29, $30, for example, for the other one. Or, as I said, ideally you start with the higher price point and then you charge the lower price point, right? So try that out, but make sure you have a decent gap of the different prices that you offer, and never ever have the same price, because that is seen as a big flag and you will get declines if you charge the same front end and the same back end. You're getting duplicate transaction failures, and that's increasing your declines considerably without anything other than the fact that it looks like you're sending duplicate transactions, even though it's for different products or maybe different services that you're offering. You never ever want to have the same price point within, at least I would say, 30 minutes, but ideally within 24 hours. You don't want to charge somebody the same amount coming from your business. Now, another thing you guys have to keep in mind, as I said earlier, your shopping cart. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but one thing you have to keep in mind is all these rules and fraud settings and so forth. There are a lot of shopping carts that offer these types of rules and settings, and they may be configured by default, same as Stripe Radar. So you have to make sure you look at your shopping cart, and if you're deciding that you're going to just use Stripe Radar for fraud, just rely on them, and you can do that and turn everything off on your shopping cart, or you can use a combination depending on the tools that you have available. But it is important that you verify fraud settings on your shopping cart to make sure that you're not getting blocked there but for any transactions. So if you're running a funnel and you have over 10% decline ratio, there are definitely things that you can look at and do to improve that. Now, sometimes, your business model is your business model and you're not willing to make any changes, and you have to suffer the consequences of that. But most of the time, I see a lot of business owners who are very open to trying different things, price testing, using an auth and settle type of way of charging and so forth. And that can have huge gains onto your conversion rate. And that is almost like I can say it's found money, because you're buying the traffic, you're putting ads out and so forth. People are wanting to buy your product or service. Them getting declined at the checkout page or by your payment processor is just a shame. It's a lost sale for absolute no reason. You did your best as a marketer to convince them to buy. They want to buy, but the credit card companies are obviously not allowing them for various reasons. So it is important, obviously, to look at these factors. And if you have 2-3% decline rate, that's normal. You're never going to get an 100% approval, but anything over 10% as in a direct-to-consumer type business, you have to start looking at things that you can do to improve upon that. So try these different tricks that I mentioned to you. As a summary, vault your data, check your Stripe Radar or whatever fraud rules that you're using. Avoid suspicious price points like free trial type price points or very low price points. Avoid duplicate price points. Try to have very different price points so it doesn't look like they're too close together. And when you're ready to scale and you've gone past $25,000, $30,000 per month in sales, consider getting yourself a merchant account, because that is actually the most flexible option you're going to get. You work with a merchant account provider. They'll be able to adapt the settings to your specific business. They won't limit you in certain things that you're allowed to do in your cart. So that is actually the ultimate solution. But obviously you need to make sure that you've proven your business concept and you have some sales before you graduate over to your own merchant account. Now, I've helped thousands of merchants really increase their conversions, and I also help them get merchant accounts. So if you'd like some help in increasing your conversions, or you're looking into switching to a merchant account, contact myself or somebody from my team at DirectPayNet, and we'll be happy to walk you through all these different settings and set up your cart to make sure that you have optimized fraud settings. And obviously we'll help you get a merchant account so you can get an alternative to Stripe. If you need any help, my contact information is below. And if you have any questions or you'd like me to look at your issues with Stripe or your business issues, feel free to send me a DM or send me some information on other episodes that I can do and record to help you and other people who are having the same issues. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. It really helps me do these videos for you guys if you really show me some love and really click that like button. So have yourself a great day, and I hope to hear from you soon.